How do you become a public service interpreter? Coming up. Hello and welcome back to the Freelanceverse. Thanks so much for coming back to the channel. I might seem still a bit sleepy and have a sleepy voice. That is because it's very early Sunday morning, but this is the time when I have time to film, and it's a very gloomy and grey morning, so perfect time to film this video. But despite the sleepy energy, I have a very special and important video for you guys. I get asked in the comments all the time, please make a video about interpreting. I want to get into interpreting, please make a video about that. And I would love to, trust me, but the thing is, I know about as much about interpreting as you guys asking the questions, so there's no point in me telling you guys something about that profession. So the next best thing, or the best thing, is to get an expert on the channel, of course. And that's what we do today. We have Aggie on the channel. She's an interpreter working in the UK with Polish and English. She also has a YouTube channel, Tips for Interpreters. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm going to link it down below. Let's bump that subscriber count up a little bit. Huge thanks to Aggie to come on the channel. It was fantastic to talk to her. So interesting, really. I felt like I was in a Netflix series, you know, about we talk about public service interpreting, as you mentioned at first. So it's a lot about police investigations, court hearings, etc. So very interesting talks. And without further ado, let's talk to Aggie. Hope you enjoy. So we are joined by Aggie today. Hello, and thank you very much for coming on the channel. You just told me you have a Polish challenge for me, right?
I do. Really? I do. Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to challenge Adrian's Polish or lack thereof. So I've got a few words for you to try. Try and listen and repeat. The first word is pszczoła.
Pszczoła.
Oh, wow, that's very good. Any guess what it means?
Pszczoła. That sounds like a noun. I would say maybe something like tree.
Oh, wow. I am blown away. You're not
Really?
actually, you're not that far off. It means a bee.
A bee. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. Let's try. Well done. This is very good. Let's try another one. Chrząszcz.
Say that again.
It's chrząszcz. Chrząszcz.
Chrząszcz. Wow, that's
wow, prima. That's so good. Very good. It means a beetle.
A beetle. Okay. Okay.
I've got the hardest one for you. Are you ready?
Yes.
This is going to be really tough. Okay, get ready. Kartoffel.
Kartoffel. Nice. What? That's a Polish word?
It is. Yeah.
No way.
Basically, yes, it is. There are two words in Polish. Well, there is a whole array of words in Polish to describe a potato, but kartoffel is a direct borrowing from German. So kartoffel is kartoffel. So there you go. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for this Polish lesson.
Okay.
That was a nice start to the video, definitely. Well, thank you very much for being here. This video is going to be about interpreting. You are an interpreter, public service interpreter. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about the profession, please?
Okay, with pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited to be here. I really like your channel and I follow it because it's really informative, even though we kind of come from slightly different fields. So I am what's called a public service interpreter, and I've worked in this job for 10 years, albeit since 2018 as a full-time job. I am qualified and I have two diplomas. One is in public service interpreting in law pathway and one in police interpreting specifically. And I work in a variety of ways, although currently I'm confined to my house, so I work remotely the whole time. But I have had a great pleasure and privilege to assist multiple government organizations and public bodies such as His Majesty's courts and tribunals. Yes, wow. It's difficult to kind of to switch. Yeah. So court tribunals, prisons, I had worked at police stations. Public service basically is when non-English speakers or limited English speakers have to or use services or be, the subject of proceedings by the public services. That's kind of, in a nutshell, what it is.
Brilliant. Yeah. When we were texting before, you said you would love to make a video about PSI, and I said, that sounds amazing, but I have no idea what it is. Thanks for this quick definition. And you mentioned that it's also known as with other terms, right?
It's also known now. Community interpreting kind of is a subsection of public service interpreting, because community interpreting, it's in situations where you possibly engage in more relationships because you might be called for the same booking repeatedly, whereas for public service it's very often it's one and done. I don't see the client or service user again. And community interpreting is settings such as healthcare, local authority, social services, community care, and also the other term that's used is dialogue interpreting.
And what is it? What is your background? How did you end up being a public service interpreter?
So I studied English at the University of Silesia in Polish, Uniwersytet Śląski, one of my favorite places on earth. I highly recommend it. It's brilliant. That's where I got to know a lot of people from the kind of Silesian minority. Fun fact, a lot of people in the Silesian area speak German as the second language. And very often the trilingual, so they speak Polish, which is kind of the same throughout. They speak fluent German, and they also speak a Silesian dialect, which is a mixture of German, Polish, and Czech. I studied English, and I found myself a kind of bit of at the crossroads during my fifth year, because I didn't really know what to do, onwards. I studied English to be a teacher. I wasn't 100% keen on teaching. I actually ended up teaching some time. But my friend, went on this course for simultaneous interpreting and translation. And I thought, wow, this sounds really cool. And she was raving about it. And I basically signed up and I did the course, and I had so much fun. It's kind of amazing that you can get so much. I actually do like studying, and I do like, learning new things. So, that's just me. But I used to get up at silly o'clock, go to catch a bus and then catch another bus and then walk, and then we would spend half of the day in booths. It was set up to resemble a conference interpreting booth, and then we would do translation at for the rest of the day. And sometime down the line, I thought, I love doing this. I'm actually really good at this. I'm going to move to the UK, and I'm going to do this for a living. I did have quite a bit of a roundabout way to do this as a job, like a full-time job, because I had quite a few jobs down the line. I like helping people, although interpreting is not helping. That's kind of a separate topic. And I do like working with people. I'm very much a people person. And interpreting is one of those jobs where it's all about customer facing. I started off in 2010 by doing some translation jobs, so just written jobs. And then I slowly kind of moved on to do more oral work, and then I qualified, and I haven't looked back since, really. This is my full-time employment right now.
Brilliant, yeah. So now you don't do any translation anymore? Now it's full-time interpreting? You do?
I do. I wasn't clear. I do language-related stuff as a full-time job. It's primarily. It depends on the time of the year as well. Sometimes I do mostly translation, and sometimes it's like 30-70 or 50-50 split, depends. Holidays are usually quite busy for me, like the summer period. This has been my full-time career since July 2018.
So you went through the whole pandemic. That must have been a big switch in interpreting services, right? A lot suddenly became remote, or was this already before the case?
I would say yes and no, because there was a period when I was still employed in my old job where I was what's called a bilingual outreach officer with the local authority, and basically supporting Polish children in schools. And I had started doing some telephone interpreting, so I was doing kind of that alongside. And I also did a lot of telephone work for private legal clients. So it wasn't exactly like a shock for me, like, oh, I'm switching from. It was more like a smooth transition, although I really did struggle with not being able to be, really customer facing and coming out to see my clients and, greeting them, shaking their hands, really simple things like that. I really missed that human touch. But yeah, I went through the pandemic. I'm kind of in a similar situation right now, so it's probably easier to bear that I had the pandemic experience, because that's kind of the same situation for me now. Yeah.
Okay, now in the beginning of the video you mentioned that PSI can be called to a police station, to a courtroom, to healthcare situations. Are there any specializations you have within interpreting, or are your gigs very varied, or do you specialize in one specific topic?
So you can specialize, and I know some colleagues who, for example, specialize in working with people with limited hearing or hearing impairment. I would say for me it's legal interpreting, and the majority of the jobs that I do are family law and criminal law.
Yeah. And one thing I was really interested in, but you kind of mentioned it before. So you said that you generally only work with a client once, right? So there is not really a relationship to build that much with the client. So I was curious, like, how do you separate? Because these, especially family law, can get so heartbreaking, I guess, right? So how do you balance like keeping it private versus professional with these clients?
It is difficult, and it can be quite overwhelming when you're starting off. And I think it's a shared sentiment that certain cases that one might have in an interpreting career will stay with you, because we are taught to be detached, because you have to be detached. You cannot get emotionally involved, because it clouds your judgment. And if it clouds your judgment, you might subconsciously side with one person. We are people, and this is a very much, a people kind of based job, if you will. And some things are subconscious. You meet someone and you think, oh, that person is quite pleasant. They don't look like someone who would do X, Y, Z. And this is very dangerous, because, Dr. Jonathan Downey said this thing about interpreters not being a conduit, a robot. We have feelings. We are feeling emotional people. But at the same time, it's very important to focus on conveying what actually is being said and being the voice for someone who otherwise wouldn't be able to have that voice. And also it's important to consider that we don't have this is something that Dr. Phil Muriel said, we don't have ownership of the conversation. The conversation is not ours. So it's between the professional, the judge, the probation worker, the police officer, the social worker, and that service user. And a really good interpreter knows that they have to really take a step back and kind of fade into the background. So basically, it's about encouraging the relationship between the service user and the professional. So there are certain subtle things that I sometimes do. For example, suggest a sitting arrangement, make sure that they sit facing each other, and then they speak to one another, and I'm just kind of interpreting from the sides.
You don't really want to be the voice of the person speaking, because that would already be too invasive, right? You don't want to kind of represent them. You want to try to communicate what they want to say. Yeah. And even if, I guess it happens that that they are saying something outrageous or just outright lying, but I guess you can't like hedge. You have to just stay in character, kind of, right? You got to say what they have to say.
This is a brilliant remark, because, for example, in the court of law, people will swear, people will say outrageous things. I have had one client who would bang on the table and shout, and I had to do the same thing, because that's basically okay. Public service interpreting is, I would say, 50% language skills and 50% acting skills, because
so cool.
how someone is saying something is very important. So, for example, if a judge asks a defendant, were you at home on Friday? And if a defendant says, yes, I was there. Okay, that's fine. But if they say, I guess. Oh, no, I wasn't. Or actually, no, I was. If it's kind of convoluted, if there is a lot of hesitation, if they're changing their minds, all that has to be reflected in interpreting. So
because
it's
in
not
the protocol, in the script of the hearing, it will be your words there in English, right?
Yeah.
So when someone goes back to read the notes, then it will be your words there. So they need to, also the tone needs to be accurate, of course. Yeah. Brilliant. Everything's so interesting, and definitely everyone's watching is super interested and amazed by this profession.
I hope so.
But there is one thing I really want to get, and the time is running so quickly. That's why I want to move on. But there is one particular point that I'm very interested in. We have talked about this before, and I read it also on LinkedIn, that for some reason this public service interpreting has kind of a bad reputation in the industry amongst conference interpreters. Is that really so? Why is that? How do you counter that? That seems outrageous because it's so important, right? So can you just give us your opinion on that?
I think public service interpreting has a bit of a reputation as a poor cousin of conference interpreting, because in order to be a conference interpreter, like in the United Nations or in the EU bodies, etc., you have to be verified and you have to be registered and you have to have special qualifications. Whereas technically, and this is a really big pet peeve of all of us, a job of a public service interpreter is not regulated by law. So pretty much, sadly, anyone can call themselves an interpreter and work as an interpreter. This is changing. There is more emphasis on recognizing the profession. The NRPSI and Mike Orloff are making amazing strides and working incredibly hard for us to be recognized. But I think the perception is that it's kind of easy to do, anybody can do it, and it's not helped by the fact that a lot of people just kind of try to interpret for their friends and family members, which is very, very wrong and shouldn't ever happen. One of the things that I try to do is raise awareness of what this job actually entails, and the fact that what you see in the media is a very, very skewed representation of public service interpreting, which is a vital and incredibly important service, because people don't actually think about this, on an everyday basis. But say if you find yourself on holidays in France, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, and God forbid if you have an accident or if you get involved in a crime, you will use an interpreter. And for us English, for people who speak English, that's kind of obvious, we're going to speak English, but that's not always the case. And sometimes you will have to use an interpreter. So I think it's important to recognize the status of our profession.
100%. Yeah, wonderful final words. I know that this video has been very long requested by people in my community, because there are aspiring interpreters out there and they want to know info about it, but obviously I don't know. That's why it's great to have you on. And
thank you.
At home, if you're watching and you want more, please let me know in the comments. We can always do a part 2, right? I think we could talk for at least another half hour about this.
Oh, easily. Yes.
But for now, that's it. Thank you very much for coming on the channel, Aggie. And
thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
I will put the links to her socials, to her YouTube channel. She has a very interesting YouTube channel you should check out, all down below in the description. And why don't you do the honors and finish off the video in Polish?
Okej. Dziękuję bardzo serdecznie wszystkim za oglądanie. Zapraszam do mojego kanału w każdy czwartek. Also danke sehr für alle liebe Sender. Jeder Montag, Dienstag, Mittwoch, Donnerstag, jeder Donnerstag. Für Donnerstag für einen neuen Film. Ich spreche über Übersetzen, Dolmetschen und...
Thank you very much.